Hello, hello. So, in my home, some hard drives from computers of days past. And what I was trying to rebuild is my iTunes library. So, I some of my CDs that never made it to iTunes include The Score, which was my first CD ever. That's by the Fugees. So I estimate about 100 CDs were transferred from my library to iTunes, and I had something between. At one point, I had 250 artists, so that was before I really got into like electronic music. So that probably bumped up to about 300 plus. Now, there's a service called iTunes Match and Google Match, and I estimated about 2,734 songs transferred through that. And what I came across was some files in my old hard drives that say about 28,000 songs. And this doesn't seem to be all of them, so let's see. Where is So I had to read these files, and I recall getting some of the Deadmau5 songs, like I Remember and Ghosts and stuff, around October of 2010. Now, I have the original credit card that these music purchases were made on. And yes, I still pay for music. And I would have to say that this information is probably inaccurate, given that some of the years attributed to the songs are incorrect. But for the most part, it's probably correct. So I describe the golden era of music, the height of music around the 2010s, where I started getting into drums and bass, dubstep, house, progressive house, trance music. Now I've listened to some of these songs prior to that. But this is when they started getting heavy rotation and became my favorite genre. My father would come up to me on many occasions and say, "Hey Matt, what's this iTunes charge for like $1.99 or something?" It used to be 99 cents per song. Then they upped it to about $1.29, and that's probably about where it sits now. And they upped the quality of the song. But in 2016, I deleted my iTunes account, which originally was insomniac1632 at AOL.com, and then it transferred to senseiloot at gmail.com. So that was around 2015 I made that change. And there was a Twitter account associated with that senseiloot at gmail.com account. And it had some Puka trade things, some bowling things. I bowled a 279, took a picture, posted on Twitter, and that was when I went bowling by myself. I didn't go with my friends. Interesting, right? I went to Sable Lanes. I got some Motive, Forza Motive bowling balls. I tried different, I tried to work on my strike shot, and I consistently, for, a 3 month period or so, was bowling in the 240s or something, and I wound up bowling a 279, knocked over every single pin, and there was one sandbagging pin, though, in the ninth frame. So I like to say, my score, unlike a 299, I knocked over every single pin, and so why does this matter to me? It's in these little conversations I have with ChatGTP are some memoirs. Hiring a ghostwriter for memoirs, so in case I were to suffer some sort of memory loss, dementia, and forget who I am, I have an outline of my memoirs, and I'm trying to preserve a sense of self, and music is central to my identity. It's something that I enjoy internally. It's something that has driven my creativity. It's something that I've enjoyed thoroughly, greatly. It's something that I enjoy by myself. It's something that I have spent a considerable amount of time on, and I've taken a shot at composing. I've been classically trained in some instruments. And when I went to graduate school and they asked me, like, what are 3 apps you can't live without? I said the Kindle app, I said any communications app, and I said music. I can't live without music. And there are some phases, I guess, but electronic music is certainly not a phase. I was looking through my old 8th grade graduation, and I noticed a friend of mine had some like death metal stuff. And when I hung out with him and when I associated with him in my 20s, that's sort of the music that he listened to. And there's nothing wrong. Like, I have one friend who thinks, we evolve and we mature in our taste. I don't like that. I think that there are some people who in high school, in order to appear more mature or to integrate with a certain, group identity or something, they started listening to Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joel. It might not have been music they liked. It might have been music they liked. It might not have been. But it was music that they listened to appear more mature or something. And some of that has to do with, contemporary music sending a message, conveying immaturity. The subject matter, the lyrics, or, well, think of Limp Bizkit. That's something that was, they were like the Nickelback of my generation. They were widely hated, and now they're kind of growing in popularity again from newer people. But I guess some of the subject matter of the lyrics and some of the attitudes and stuff, they were kind of, they might be associated with people who are, I don't know. But we'll use them as an example of, like my friend saying, you still like Limp Bizkit? Why don't you grow up and listen to, the Rolling Stones or something? And my take on the Rolling Stones and stuff and CCW is, every Vietnam movie is going to have CCW. Every fucking Scorsese film is going to have Rolling Stones. I've heard enough of them. To me, they're played out. This is music that I've heard, and I expand my library and taste. And I might go back to those songs. I might not, but that doesn't mean that I've grown out of them. It's just that, potentially that they've been in such heavy rotation that I've just, burnt down on hearing, the song again. And I might, return to it later on. Um, but my music, initially I purchased some rap music, but it had explicit lyrics, N words, and F bombs, and all that stuff. My mother made me return these things. Then I started getting into new metal. Those are white guys singing, the Limp Bizkits, the Corns, and the Linkin Parks. And then I got into more, EDM instrumental stuff. And there's a big gap between, I guess, 1999 and 2010. I guess that's filled with some Metallica and stuff. I don't think I got into Metallica until like the mid 2000s. It was probably a little bit before the Saint Anger stuff, because I remember on Napster getting some Metallica might complain about Napster, but I've probably spent more on Metallica than, their average fan. I have FLAC lossless audio CDs from concerts I attended, such as the Madly in Anger concert at Nassau Coliseum. There were 2 nights I went to, so I went to their website and I purchased the CDs, and I have, the Strong Island, Metallica is here, give me an M, give me an E, give me a T, give me Phil, give me Bob, give me that. They played I Disappear, they played Dyer's Eve, and then I have Live Shit and Binge that I purchased, I have S&M, I have a lot of albums that I purchased, and then I went out and I purchased, some of the collector's things. So I have them on vinyl, I have them on CD, I have them on digital download, so I have a lot of money. They represent a lot of, space on my iTunes account. And I guess they can thank Napster for introducing me to some of their music. The way Metallica went down was the first song I ever heard was Until It Sleeps. I didn't really like it. I don't think Enter Sandman was the next song. The song that was introduced to me by MTV's Karaoke. And that was around 1998, 1999, because they said the song Faith was difficult. I remember learning Faith, and whether I had a CD booklet. Some people say, you kids nowadays, you're so lucky you have the lyrics in the YouTube videos. Well, if you purchase a CD, many of them have the lyrics to the songs in the CD booklet. But I remember sitting there listening to Nookie and Faith on my Sony 3-disc, 5-disc changer, and making sure I knew how many Hayes or Nookie and, all the words to Faith. And another hood tied me down to a love above you. And if I have to brush up on it a bit, I sing the George Michael version. I sing the George Michael chorus, and then I sing the Limp Bizkit, whatever that other part is. There's some variance in, you have a body like me or something. Nobody has a body like you or something. It's just different in me's and you's, but I don't like the screaming aspect of Limp Bizkit. Anyway. If I'm a little all over the place, I did send a letter recently to the Attorney General of the state of New York. That's right. Here's preview, and in some of these letters, towards the bottom, I discuss dementia, and I use a song as an example. So this is my correspondence with the Attorney General of the State of New York. I say, Dear Attorney General Letitia James, I hope this message finds you well. I hope you have not grown tired of my request for help. As I just mentioned to my mother on the phone, I'm concerned for my soul. This came from an This came after an experience where I was singing a song in my head or attempting to, and I seemed to lose my space and time, where the song I wanted to sing, Every Morning by Sugar Ray, was replaced by Someday by Sugar Ray. I felt like for a moment that I was not in control of my thoughts. In the months prior to my sentence, I went to a restaurant called Ford's in New York, and after using the restroom, I started walking out of the restaurant, leaving my backpack with my laptop and without paying the bill. As I approached the outside, I realized what was going on and returned to my place at the bar. In the past, I have mentioned to my parents concerns about dementia, and during this phone call, I brought up that when I played football in high school, I likely had a concussion that went untreated and was concerned for my brain health when all the CT talk came out. I had once thought of Junior Seau as a hero for donating his brain to science following his suicide. I had also had obstructive sleep apnea, which would cause sleep paralysis and chronic fatigue, and I was concerned that oxygen deprivation in my sleep might have caused long-term brain damage. I also addressed recent traumas such as my coma, being assaulted by the police, and falling down the stairs at work at Amneal Pharmaceuticals. In fact, when I was out on workers' comp from Amneal Pharmaceuticals, I was out on workers' compensation from Amneal when I got assaulted by the police and recently had MRIs in my brain related to workplace injury. So I think this letter, I include this little thing after. If you ever seen The Serpent in the Rainbow, there's a scene where Bill Pullman's character exclaims, "Don't let them bury me." These letters are not just about seeking justice and damages for harms inflicted on me by 911 responders in hospitals. They're an attempt to preserve or save my soul. I think if this was included in a previous draft, and I think if I got rid of it, his letter would be much better. And I had told the Attorney General that I was reading Robert Sapolsky's book Behave, and I said, I am almost finished with Sapolsky, and I'm currently reading about forgiveness. According to Sapolsky, forgiveness seems to be at least somewhat good for your health. Victims who show spontaneous forgiveness or who have gone through forgiveness therapy as opposed to anger validation therapy show improvements in general health, cardiovascular function, and symptoms of depression, anxiety, and PTSD. The revelation that anger validation therapy is quote-unquote not effective, it doesn't actually say that, triggered my PTSD. I gritted my teeth in frustration. The issue is of validation. I need validation that recognizes the harms I experience as unjust and ones that an individual should not experience. In a previous correspondence, the first letter with McKinney's Public Health Law, I thought of including the following. Among the postmodern approaches to counseling is a counseling theory called narrative therapy. One technique of narrative therapy is something called therapeutic documents. This technique can serve to reinforce an individual's new narrative. In my counseling theories course, I posited that code is law and congruence between a person's real and ideal self is achieved when the narrative, as perceived by others, aligns with your genuine self. I am hoping to use law to validate my narrative and that I was the victim and not the aggressor, that I am suffering and that I am well-intentioned. I enjoyed my counseling theories at Seton Hall. I also took a similar course, Systems of Psychotherapy at Saybrook, and expressed interest in teaching it in a discussion I had with Jody Kulstad. I see the potential issue with narrative therapy being a scenario where the new narrative does not fit with reality and serves to feed a delusion. At Saybrook, I read how narrative therapy could be used to treat nightmare disorder, where the client would rewrite the narrative of their dreams. That's Geiselman. I have it written somewhere. In my own practice, I envision offering drug testing to my clients to reinforce their narrative if they were combating something like a custody dispute where substance use might be called into question. I even purchased equipment from AlcoPro, who sold something called LabStation. Lab is no longer associated with AlcoPro. Once I collected myself after reading about anger validation, Sapolsky 2018 goes on to say, we've now focused on forgiveness, apology, reparation, reconciliation, and the extent to which TRCs were about reconciliation rather than forgiveness. What about the truth part? It should say it facilitates. It facilitates the healing process enormously. In the TRCs, perpetrators spilling truth, detailed, exhaustive, unflinching, and public, was the highest priority for victims. It's the need to know what happened. It's getting the villain to say the words. It's to show the world, look what they did to us. An apology and forgiveness does not give me any reassurance that I will not endure future harm. In addition to validating my experiences, a victory in court would send the message, don't touch me. This is sort of what occurred after the Elijah McClain incident, where Colorado engaged in policy reform pertaining to the use of ketamine by emergency responders. However, this was undermined by the release of Elijah's killer after only serving 4 months, which sends a message that it was okay for emergency responders to harm others. While a public victory could validate me and support a narrative that I was harmed, a defeat would support narratives that these actions are okay, that I am overreacting, or that I am crazy. If you think I grew up banging my head because I got the wrong G.I. Joe toy for Christmas, you have done me a disservice. Non-suicidal self-injury is a new behavior caused by trauma, uncertainty, and fear that I will be subjected to more harm and mental torture. Don't let them hospitalize me. Well, if we got rid of this, don't let them bury me, I think this letter would be a solid entry overall. And here's the postscript. I have finished Behave by Robert Sapolsky. In the last chapter titled War and Peace, Sapolsky discusses Mohamed Bouazizi, a 26-year-old fruit seller in Tanzania who set himself on fire after his complaints of police harassment went ignored by the government. Sapolsky goes on to state, the Arab Spring, Bouazizi, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, wasn't thinking about political reform in the Muslim world when he lit the match. Instead, there was rage with nowhere to go but inward. I feel that last part describes my experience with non-suicidal self-injury, where due to the system failing to provide me aid in regards to these harms, violence is directed inward. As an introvert, this is an assault on my sanctuary. I live internally, and those harms have impacted that environment. Self-inflicted violence may occur after cycling through possible outlets for help, only to come to realize that no one is going to help me. I've already exhausted proper channels. I think to myself, for me this means a lifetime of fear and uncertainty that I will be subjected to more harm and further restrictions of my freedom in a hospital, cruel and unusual mental torture. As such, I have been seeking death with dignity. Now, as far as this cruel and unusual thing, as defined by the Constitution, it's basically the punishment does not fit the crime. I have a death with dignity petition on the internet, and somebody wrote, like, if you think that people care about you, then you either blah, blah, blah. And to me, it's quintessential Chris Perich. The logic behind the post just seems very much like my old friend Chris Perich. But I also speculate, given the Jewish anti-Semitism surrounding the post from that person, it could be potentially one of my lawyers or something. I don't know where this Jewish thing comes from. I was baptized Roman Catholic, and I tried to start my own religion. It's called, I call it the Church of the Red Dragon. Basically, it's the Divinity of the Crown, and it, if you see in any of my journal entries, you'll see RC, which stands for Roman Catholic. That's what I put after. So rather than AD, someone might put, it's the year 2026 AD. I put RC for Roman Catholic. My calendar has reset. We're on the year 6. Happy New Year, everybody. We just celebrated New Year. The courts, I actually petitioned the courts to see if I can formally organize my religion. They denied my request. It's not the end of the world. Doesn't change my beliefs. There's about 5 hours left in my time machine. I am but I have to. So when I was in jail, when I was in prison, they give me a little tablet, and this allows me to search the law resources at Westgate, and so I'm preparing a letter to send the Attorney General of the state of New York, and my first letter is basically framed on informed consent and precedent of Greenberg v. Montefiore, which is precedent I knew going into prison. So when I looked it up, I was able to find it, and it really didn't provide me much more information. It actually confused me a bit because I was unsure, based on what I was reading, was it set in stone that advanced care directives were enforceable documents that an individual could seek damages on. I don't actually think the case presented by Greenberg v. Montefiore was a very strong one, and it looks like it was rejected on the basis that it didn't have an actual, that there was no actual claim in their proceedings. My case is actually stronger because I'm suing on the basis of battery, where they assaulted me. So, they're just claiming pain and suffering due to violations of breaching standard of care, which again, I don't think standard of care was. I think the standard of care is, fuck your directives. I'm a doctor. This is what I need to do good. There's a part in Sapolsky's book where they talk about empathy and how doctors like emotionally distance themselves from patients, and it would seem that ignoring the patients, that the doctor knows better. They went to medical school. They understand disease better than the average individual, and that they're going to force treatment on you because they know better than you, and they'll be damned if they let you throw your life away. And I'm in a position where I don't I don't want you touching me, and I would rather die than have you preserve me in a life where people think it's okay to do what you're doing. And but I came across something called McKinney's Public Health Law, and McKinney's Public Health Law says is basically a patient bill of rights in certain medical facilities. It doesn't say which medical facilities those are, but some of the language indicates would make me believe that it's a long-term nursing home or something. However, I felt that the language was such where, well, here's for hospitals and here's for long-term, because there's some things that are kind of redundant, where don't touch the ombudsman or something, somebody, some proxy or something, in these long-term settings, which is also talked about in previous parts of the health law. Now, when I went to the law library at the prison, and somebody Googled it for me, and it said hospitals and it said nursing homes. But so I'm going to have to go back because it seems to be applicable only to nursing homes. But in the Patient Bill of Rights, now if you say, well, how come you studied health law? How come you don't know this stuff? Apparently, it was passed in February 2022, and most of my health law training was completed at that time, especially when it comes to elder care and nursing home care. I studied a lot of that stuff in 2020. 2 years later, I'm studying children's health and the law. So this is some of the language is similar in the Patient Bill of Rights, but I have to go back and make some revisions. And basically, my suit against Stony Brook Hospital is framed in such a way where I'm suing based on I'm allowed to present grievances to anybody. So, as far as compensation, there's something in McKinney's public health law that states I'm allowed to seek improvements within the industry. So I'm allowed to either as an individual or join with others to seek improvements within the healthcare industry. So I'm basically that's what I'm asking for. This is something where I've discussed how this has been part of a lifelong journey in pursuit of healthcare policy and health law and all this stuff. And I describe it in a journal entry early on. Um, in this journal entry here, I mention some of the things I have done since I was a child and how, health the healthcare industry has affected my life and why I want to go into healthcare policy. And so I basically used the law as an excuse to continue my studies and to a PhD in healthcare policy and health law. And I have 72 graduate credits. There are some PhDs that are 66 graduate credits. There are some masters that are 30 graduate credits or something. And so I have 72 in clinical and counseling psychology and health law. And I basically ask, for continued support from the Attorney General. So I try to keep most of these letters neutral. Um, but there were times I was holding on to letters, and if I'm like, as if my soul depended on it. Like I got to mail this letter out because otherwise tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be Steve Rogers, and I'm gonna be a complete different person. You know, and it's just gonna be the end of the Joya timeline, and basically I attribute that to being in prison. There are things I cared about, but I couldn't act upon, and therefore it caused that part of the brain to atrophy. By like being at home and being able to engage in something I care about creates that connection in my brain. And you can read all about connections in the book Behave by Robert Sapolsky. Which I think I'm going to go to the mall later. I'm going to have this laptop fixed. And Robert has a new book out. And his new book is Determined. So he has a chapter in this book that's about the legal system. And he spoke a lot about free will. And I was looking forward to this section. After I finished this book, I was thinking of returning to some of his other works. I wasn't going to read Primates and Memoir. One of my peers had read a Primates memoir, if I can say the words. I had read Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers during my undergrad for my evolution course. She was taking an evolution course after I had taken it, and she had showed me that book. She said how people with ADHD might eat tinfoil or something, and she asked to see my evolution exam. So I refused to show her my evolution exam, which I actually have pictures of. And I don't know, I just don't want to read that book because I associate with her. And but I thought the next one I might read is the Trouble with Testosterone. But now that I saw that he has Determined, A Science of Life Without Free Will, I want to, write some things on. So I want to do a clinical test for competence to declare mature minor status. Some of the things I've thought about using are your capacity to form criminal intent, long-term decision making, financial responsibility. And when I was reading Sapolsky's book, I took the approach: how open are you to more novel experiences? Like, are you Are you open to many novel experiences, or have you experienced enough where your trajectory is kind of predictable or something? I don't know how to completely frame it. I want to get a little bit more um, reading in that arena, and I use the word arena. Um, so it might be of interest to me to read Determined. I I found it to be the whole book. I loved Behave, but I wasn't in love with that section on free will. I felt that the previous chapters, which I had used in my letters to um, the Attorney General, did a good job of explaining what drives our behavior and how we might mediate it using, prefrontal cortex and executive function. And I guess I don't question that we have free will. Um, anyway, I gotta get ready to go.